The North Korean people are terrified of escaping their country. One of the most famous North Korean refugees lives in America now. She wrote a book about her experiences, saying that as an 11-year-old girl, she was afraid that the great leader was actually reading her mind while she was crossing the border. We are watching a military jeep on the North Korean side. It is about half a mile to the South Korean border and is approaching the checkpoint. The driver normally stops to show his ID. Instead, this person hits the gas, rushing past the officers at full speed. The sentry runs out to the road and signals a warning on the radio. The other sentries rush from their post. The jeep goes out of sight behind the trees, runs up onto the curb and loses a wheel. It is stuck. The man opens the jeep's door and rushes out. It is only about 20 feet to the South Korean border and freedom. The sentries open fire even though it is forbidden to shoot in the demilitarized zone. 4 of them are trying to shoot the escapee. One of them even crosses the South Korean border in the chase. The man from the jeep finally escapes North Korea. This road we see is in South Korea, but even so, a second later, a bullet hits him and he falls. However, he is still breathing. Escape from North Korea.
Hello guys, my name is Anton. I'm that blogger who went to North Korea and also visited China at the time there was a coronavirus pandemic. I want to introduce myself. I'm 29, I'm a reporter and I travel around the world. I'm not paid by anyone for what I'm doing, I just choose the countries by myself. Normally I'm interested in countries that you would never travel to, so I like to go to some dangerous places like Venezuela or Somalia or somewhere else and cover the way people live there, the regular people, so it's like not a touristic content. So I travel around the world by myself and I also cover all the costs by myself, so that's why I decided to create a Patreon page. There's a link in the description. If you're interested in what I'm doing, please follow me there, subscribe and donate, so you will help me to create much more interesting content. For those who do donate me, I will make some extra videos. I'll be able to visit much more countries and go much deeper and further than far, something like this. And what's more, all of my Patreon subscribers will be the first ones who see my videos, so before publishing my video on YouTube I will definitely do it on Patreon. So if you do help me, I'll hug you all together. So now let's get back to North Korea.
My friends, today I want to tell you about people who flee North Korea, risking their lives getting across the world's most heavily defended border zone, despite knowing their relatives remaining in North Korea may be sent off to a labor camp. Every North Korean who escapes the country leaves a hostage back home. The man from the jeep survived, by the way. I will show you where he is now. I will ask the Korean people about who can legally leave the country and how much it costs them in bribes. You work in Beijing? No, Africa. Who are the North Korean elite class, each with a smartphone in each pocket, living in skyscrapers in Pyongyang while the rank-and-file citizens work 7 days a week under constant surveillance similar to that in a prison? It seems that these workers even squat on command. It looks like they're resting, but even this is conducted in strict order. They sit in line, organized into several rows. I will show you one of the aircraft belonging to the North Korean Airlines, a company that is often called the world's only no-star airline. Look, the curtain in these windows don't close. I will show you the new North Korea where beer costs 20 cents a bottle, as well as the black markets where the North Koreans can buy Hollywood movies like Titanic. I will play the music of our local stars for them to hear and compare. My name is Lyadov, and I will show you the life of people behind the North Korean border. Please hit the like button now, and please subscribe to our channel. The more subscribers we have, the easier it is for me to raise money for new trips. I will post some important information on my Instagram page. This is where I'll post the results of our prize drawing as well as the first photos from this trip. Check it out and follow me there. That's the best way to contact me. I try to reply to everyone via direct messages. A shot is fired from a flare pistol. Russian border guards on a motorboat have closed in on a North Korean boat. Call off your dogs! These are North Korean poachers in the Sea of Japan. They are not just fishing in a forbidden area, they are doing so while armed. These men are carrying guns. They even tried to challenge the Russian border guards. They're dropping their cargo. The North Koreans put up lamps all over the deck so they can fish during the night. 300 such fishermen were caught at the Russia-North Korean border over the last few months. This news is how I learned that North Korea actually shares a border with Russia. I got a unique opportunity to climb to the top of this tower overlooking the North Korean border. One can see everything from here. The border lies along this river, and that is where our border guards patrol the area. North Korea, Russia. The Russia-North Korea border runs for only 18 miles, but even this tiny strip of land is closely guarded. Across the bridge lies North Korea. We can even hear patriotic music coming from the other side. Of course, this situation raises the question, how can North Korea fishermen even reach foreign waters if people are prohibited from leaving the country? The answer is that there's a certain group of North Korean people who are not only allowed to leave the country, but are even sent out by the government. The widespread notion that no North Korean people are allowed to leave the country has found its way to all corners of the internet. In truth, however, the statement is both true and false. How so? The reason is any citizen can receive de facto permission to leave the country, but they are required to have a good reason for doing so. Like, for instance, having relatives in China. This can happen if your sogbun allows it. A sogbun is a personal rating system used in North Korea. As soon as a citizen turns 17, the government makes a personal file on them that is updated every 2 years. There was a similar system depicted in the Black Mirror TV series. There was an episode where people rated each other, giving out stars for polite behavior. In North Korea, people receive stars for political enthusiasm. The difference here is that people are born with a certain sogbun that varies depending on who their parents are. For instance, if one of their ancestors escaped the country, the person is placed in either the wavering or the hostile group. There are 3 group ratings in North Korea: friendly, wavering, and hostile. During his speech in 1958, Kim Il-sung stated that the moment 25% of the population formed the main group, the wavering group included 55% of the population, and the remaining 20% to the hostile group. Your grouping influences what jobs you can get, what universities you can enter, whether or not you can live in the capital city of Pyongyang, your number in line to receive rations from the government, as well as many other privileges. Therefore, you can apply for leaving the country and even receive permission if your sogbun allows it. Migrant workers are also allowed to leave the country. The workers I met on the train in the previous video were migrant workers too. We were working in Algeria. Working? For 4 years. My friends, it is okay for me to talk about this. This is the official public version written in all the papers, and it is also the version known internationally. To anyone worried about the people from this train, they will be alright. I used the interpreter to ask them how much money they made in Algeria. Don't ask, he whispers back to me. Ask me, no. A man from a different group used to work in Nakhodka, a Russian city, so he speaks a little Russian. Did you earn a lot of money in Russia? Not so much in Algeria. Not much. How much? How much? $3,000? For 2 years? $3,000. Yeah. $125 a month. In 1 month? Is that a lot in Korea? It is only a little in Korea, too. Just a little? Yeah. What can you buy with that? Enough for an apartment or a car? No. A car? No. No. The man is one of the workers as well. He speaks English. What do you work as? What is your job? An architect. Do you work in Beijing? No, in Africa. Really? Where? In Angola. In Angola. Wait a second. Angola? But they were just talking about working in Algeria. These are nowhere close to one another, and to get it wrong is very telling. The claim that he lived in Algeria for 4 years cannot possibly be true. As I was trying to figure this out, I remembered the footage I saw in the North Korean district in the capital of China a few hours prior to my getting on this train. I covered up his face just in case, even though there is nothing to punish him for. Pay attention to the collar, t-shirt, and the watch. This is the same person. This footage is from a nearby shop in the same district. See this man? A collared t-shirt with blue stripes and a trapezoidal pattern. And here he is again on the train. Here, another man who you can recognize by his striped t-shirt. Here he is in the first shop, and here he is on the train. I started to suspect that these people were lying to me about their work, so I found an interpreter who listened carefully to what the North Koreans were saying to one another. This was very difficult, actually, because people mostly study the South Korean version of the language, and the dialects are so different that a South Korean hardly understands 10% of what a North Korean is saying. Listen closely to what they said to one another when I asked about what they were doing. We'll say Algeria, okay? Right? The Algerian cover story. So they were working neither in Algeria nor in Angola. They were actually smuggling goods to trade in China. The architect is their leader. He doesn't deal with merchandise, he is only responsible for transporting the group, and that is why he can speak English. But why would they lie to me? This is because China, where the North Koreans really work, relies heavily on its relationship with the Western market. The Western market in turn supports the sanctions the USA imposes against North Korea. This means that China cannot legally hire North Korean workers, and yet both China and North Korea are good socialist friends, so they do it under the table. A long time ago, the North Korean government developed a program for those who want to work abroad. If you do not have any runaway relatives, you may submit an application, and once it is reviewed, you receive a visa for precisely 1 year. Then you have to renew it. There's a whole district in China for such workers. This is what Beijing's North Korean district looks like. To the left is the North Korean embassy. Look closely, and you see that the embassy takes serious security measures. There's a fence outside with a giant brick wall behind it. Another fence, barbed wire, and lots of trees. Only behind all of this can you see the embassy building. Thus, there's an entire district formed around the embassy. That is where the North Korean migrant workers live. This shop, they sell furs here. Quite the luxury clothing, one could say. There are also 3 other shops in this same building. They sell kitchenware in this one. Over there, you can see school supplies, beauty products, and so on. Note that the people here only speak the North Korean language. We were visiting this place with a Chinese guide, but he didn't understand what they were saying. I should add that he feels that they have formed their own society here. He says that they never tell him where they are from, how much money they are paid, or anything else, really. It is a closed community, so to speak. When North Korean migrant workers come to China, the state kind of just lets these Koreans live there. Yeah, this is the place for them. They don't want to live anywhere else. What do you mean? They don't want to settle in other districts. They don't. They only want to live with other Koreans. Yes. They want to live with their own people next to the embassy. We just passed it. So these flats are built specifically for them. Yeah. And the rent is different from what you pay? Yeah, I think so. They support each other. I mean, like friendship. The international friendship. The migrant workers usually live in buildings such as these. They're 5-story buildings. They have no elevators. Some of them have built-in air conditioners, though. There are very few of them. People work here too. They have their own jobs, businesses, restaurants. Their own businesses, their own communities. Yes, they hold their own restaurants and cafes. People write freely on the tables. For instance, here in Chinese, it is written they are serving a North Korean national dish. It is a cold noodle dish with a North Korean accent to the recipe. But this item is nowhere on the menu. It's not stated on the menu, nor is it shown on the signboards. The owners of such companies form a whole separate clan in modern North Korea. They're called Tenju, which roughly translates as the masters of money. Not only can they afford expensive watches, but also houses equipped with satellite TV dishes, even though these are actually prohibited in the country. Legally, you can only watch cable. They have their own water heaters on the rooftops. They can afford the most beautiful apartments standing on the most beautiful streets, a great many of which are unoccupied. Each of these costs $70,000 to $80,000. The children of the Korean upper class have expensive smartphones. I showed you in the previous video that they have a chess app installed. I realized that since I'm in North Korea, I have to try dog meat. Had it not been for the relationship with you, my viewers, I would never have tried dog meat because I have a dog. This is Patrick, my corgi. I love him dearly, and he is waiting for me back in Moscow. Maybe this is his distant Korean relative. This is what cooked dog meat looks like. I want to smell it first. I cannot tell that it is dog meat by the smell. It smells nothing like a dog. It smells just like your usual soup, some kind of meat, beef or chicken. This dog meat meal cost me $5. That's a lot of money in North Korea. Dog meat is a delicacy around here, so watching me squirm like this, people outside just look at me the same way Russian people would look at some spoiled, rich, white jerk. Listen, this is really delicious. The meat is unbelievably tender. It's amazing. Had I not known it were a dog, I would eat it every day. So delicious. So delicious. This is really true. What else can I say? Really delicious. Folks here believe you should eat dog meat soup during the 3 hottest days in summer, because they believe that this meat and its fat prevent the body from overheating. Pyongyang summer can get really hot, over 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Since it's also very humid here, summertime is very difficult to handle. Eating dog meat feels very strange. I feel like I was the most disgusting human being on earth. And when I put the spoon in my mouth, I was thinking what a creep I must be to do this. But once you start chewing it, you realize that this meat is delicious. It's also cooked extremely well, very tender. It tastes nothing like chicken. It's somewhat similar to well-braised beef, very similar. So, if one day people in Moscow learn how to make braised shawarma, you won't be able to tell the difference, I tell you. I'm trying a dog rib. This dog is much skinnier than the previous one. And it tastes less similar to beef. I think I've had enough. Even though the meat is delicious, I still feel disgusted. I want to wash my mouth out. That's how I feel. Businessmen buy dogs from farmers for $48 each. They're in a big demand for restaurants, cafes, and hotels. A farmer in North Korea gives 70% of his earnings to the government and gets to keep only the remaining 30%. This is actually considered a good deal because the system used to work outside percentages. In the past, they were demanded to give a fixed sum to the state, regardless of how much money they actually made. That was one of Kim Jong Un's reforms, which actually improved the state's economy a bit. Thanks to him, you can meet some merchants not only under the bridges, but also at the center of Pyongyang. Businessmen can legally open up shops, cafes, and restaurants. This opportunity is no longer forbidden by the government. Actually, technical developments do manage to reach North Korea. This young lady, Park Young-mi, escaped the country in 2007, and here is what she had to say about North Korean teenagers.
I'm 21 years old, and there are many.
I am 21 years old, and there are many changes in North Korea. This is my generation. We are often called the black market generation. We had access to outside mass media sources. Private markets gave us access not only to food and clothes, but also to DVDs with movies such as Titanic and USB drives with Wikipedia pages. Black markets started popping up in North Korea as far back as the 90s after the fall of the Soviet Union, when the hunger pushed people to look for any way to feed themselves and survive. They started selling anything they could find. This man bought a cart of some corn-like weed. This one is dealing in rice. The black market in the city of Wonsan in 1998. How are these old ladies selling factory-made shoes from the black market, you might ask? It's simple, really. They bought them from the neighboring country of China through the very same North Korean Iron Curtain. These North Koreans had Chinese relatives, friends, or connections in the government, and they started to make use of these contacts back in the 90s. Bribes serves as a solution to any problem. Getting a bus from China to North Korea costs from $200 to $400. One of the most popular types of trade involved harvesting North Korean marine life such as mussels and sea cucumbers, which sold like hotcakes in China. At first, all the harvesting was done manually, but as the turnover increased, the merchants started to build specialized ships. As far as paperwork was concerned, a businessman was considered merely a worker at the state's official agency. But in truth, the officials simply turned a blind eye every time a commercial vessel went out to sea. The military would even get part of profit from the trade at the end of each month. Such practices became widespread. Private enterprises emerged in the guise of state-owned factories, ministries, and so on. A businessman would personally run a company that was officially registered as a state-owned company and simply share his profits with the government. Ships were used to transport large quantities of goods out of the country. Smugglers dealt in petty trading. This footage was taken in the dead of night. Two people are dragging something. At dawn, the military man who was given a bribe to let them pass covers their tracks using his coat. The petty trade at the border is mostly done by these so-called fishermen. This footage was taken at the river that separates North Korea and China. Fish and ginseng, their ginseng is the best, cigarettes, and so on. This saleswoman is wearing a headscarf over a cap. This is what all the employees who are trusted with receiving money look like. I managed to film one on camera next to a train station in Pyongyang, but then she tried to hide behind the kiosks. Behind me is a taxi station. This is a very centralized operation. There's a dispatcher who allocates the passengers. Passengers pay him the fare, not the taxi driver. Not everyone in North Korea can receive a driver's license. You can only get it if it's required for a job, like if you become a taxi driver, for example. Take a look at these drivers. They're different from ours in the sense that they are wearing a uniform. However, these drivers are not sticking to the dress code. They wear black trousers and white shirts, but they are also supposed to wear a necktie. The air cargo taxi operator is one of North Korea's largest business empires. Another one of these giant businesses is a company called Masikirog that is in charge of a local ski resort. Believe it or not, the North Koreans have those too. Masikirog is also involved in tourism. They organize bus trips and even sell bottled water. This means they provide money for the socialist regime in a very capitalistic manner. In North Korea, tourism developed so quickly that tourism ads are now displayed virtually side by side with socialist propaganda. These advertisements are all over the city. Look at this, for example, open the way for great socialist construction. There are commercial banners too. This one advertises minibuses. Its slogan reads, "Let's roll into the future." And yet, despite the development of capitalism, the state treats its average people, the workers, the same as they always have. Out the window, I can see the Koreans going to work. Behind my back is a construction site. They have just arrived at their workplace. It's around 7:30. There's a clear social division in Korean society. The first group are the workers, the builders. This one is an all-female group. This latter group consists of the higher-ups, probably supervisors. They come to work later. Look where they are now. They still have 10 to 15 minutes before the working day begins. It looks like they're resting, but it is all in strict order. They sit in a line, organized into several rows. Note how they even squat on command. A soldier was assigned here specifically not to let any strangers onto the construction site. He opened the gate. By the way, see how they didn't spare any money for a concrete perimeter wall. They put up some concrete blocks instead of a fence. A pair of workers is assigned to each task. It is not the Korean way for any person to work alone. Look at this example. You can't just send someone to clean the floor with a mop. There must be a supervisor pointing his finger to where to push the water and where to push it from. Take a look at his outfit, by the way. This is an example of North Korean high fashion, a business suit with short sleeves. The Korean way of thinking holds that the more people are working, the better. Here, for instance, people are putting up bricks on barriers on the highway. I counted 63 people on a portion of highway 300 feet long. Tractors and bicycles are used to carry construction materials. We even see a bull-drawn cart here. North Koreans are exceptionally hardworking. No spare to replace the tire on a tractor or a cart? This man made these makeshift wheels composed of iron rims. They don't even have a mop and a brush, not to mention cleaning machines. Look over there. The workers picked up branches and carefully cleaned each tile. No gas-powered lawnmowers? A man uses a sickle not only to cut grass on the roadside, but also to uproot the sprouts making their way up from underground. No pressing machine to do the tiling on the pavement? They will use their own weight. Is there a need to house people next to the workplace? They put up tents on the wooden planks, put some stones on the top, and there you go. Someone left a hole in the roof here, though. This is what local gold miners live like. The government allows anyone to mine the gold here, but on two conditions. That the government receive a part of the profits and that the miners set up their own mining excavator. As for the local rivers, there's usually a machine every 3 to 6 miles. It's very simple. They drill a hole, use a hoe to raise the ground, pan it, and pick out the gold. Some of the companies don't even use the hose. They simply take a pot, put some pipes into it, and use those to raise the dirt, which they later sift through manually. Seeing the rural people here up close is a rare opportunity. Look at the man behind me. He is farming the land using a simple digging hoe. The woman behind him is picking the grass with her bare hands. Another feature of the rural regions is that people here work more. For example, people in Pyongyang work 10 hours a day while also working 6 days a week. In the countryside, however, people work 10 days at a time, not following the usual 7-day week as a pattern. Here they work 10 days in a row, then get 1 day off, then 10 days more, and so on. Farmers make their housing right in the fields. Look, there's an actual pit house dug 3 feet into the ground. There are some plastic bags on the rooftop. They even put up a furnace with a chimney. Another option is to build a hut. Hay is put over the framework, always with a couple of sandbags to try and stop at least some of the water that will eventually run through. The fields are regularly flooded. This is vital for growing rice. Private enterprises are often run by women. They are the ones who bring in 75% of the family's income, sometimes even as much as 90%. All men in North Korea are required to be employed. Even if a factory is at a standstill, a man would still have to go to his workplace, even if it means just sitting there or finding things to clean. This means that the men keep going to work even if they do not earn any money for it. Otherwise, they are punished for not working. Consequently, women can be housewives, but they combine the lifestyle of being a housewife with some sort of profession. This is a real snake inside this bottle. This is a real snake, right? A yellow snake, yeah? There's a real yellow snake inside the bottle. Around 50. You mean the alcohol. 50% alcohol. This is a 100 proof drink. This is only for research purposes. Promise. Do you need water? I think you can see it on my face. How is it? Everything is just fine. This has some serious kick. I'm telling you. Bit of an aftertaste, too. It feels like I have scales on my mouth. The locals visit a different type of place. As I understand, these places don't have any names to them. Look at this restaurant, for instance. It hasn't got a name. The sign simply reads restaurant. Over there is a drugstore, and the sign reads drugstore. No name. That's a simple grocery store. And over there is, well, we'd call it a pub. They simply have a pub sign. People come here to drink beer.
Is beer expensive? $0.2.
1 liter costs about 20 cents.
Beer paper? Ah, really? They receive them from the state.
People get a beer ticket every day. They are handed over by the government. 1 ticket gives you 1 liter of beer a day for free. But if you want more, you have to pay an additional 20 cents.
$0.2.
This sounds great, but unfortunately, I can't check if it's true. But still, food prices for the locals are indeed low. For example, I walked into a drugstore. Over there on the shelf is a blood clot medication. The price tag reads $300. The chemist explained it. Divide it by 100, so it's $3. We found the same medicine on sale for foreigners at the price of $42. This was shown on the internet. The country's greatness is not entirely in its propaganda lines. Technical progress is actually happening for real as well. There are traffic lights along with traffic controllers at the crossroads. The traffic controllers are there on standby in case something goes wrong with the electricity. There aren't any traffic lights outside the capital. People drive the old way with the help of controllers. Another novelty is speed control cameras, though I'm not actually sure if they work or not. Our driver was going at full speed and never put his seatbelt on. Most of the local people use trolley buses and trams, so the queues at the stations are enormous in the early mornings and evenings. There are very few buses. Yes, there are electricity shortages all over the country, but the electricity situation is better than the oil supply. Our biggest problem is the lack of petrol. I mean, oil. It's expensive, right? Same prices as Moscow, I think. Is it hard to come by? There is not much of it here, yeah. We still have enough oil to get by, though. But getting oil can be kind of difficult. We often say that it is better not to buy it for ourselves, but to leave it all for the public transportation services. Some travel by subway. The subway in North Korea is quite similar to ours. The only difference is the price. The fare is 5 won for the locals. It's practically a bargain. The subway has 2 lines. By the way, it's more than in my native town of Samara. The reason is that we have only had 1 line for 32 years now. In Pyongyang, there are 18 stations with the subway opening at 6:30 a.m. and closing down at 9:30 p.m. And here you can see a North Korean version of the Yandex Metro app. Let me show you how it works. Right now I'm here. Let's say I want to go to this station. The electronic board shows you the right way. The same goes for the other directions. The doors are not automatic, so you have to open them by yourself by hand. The rush hour here starts at 7 a.m. The crowds are so dense that it is very difficult to get through. But by 8 a.m., the crowds are gone. The subway is considered to be one of the deepest in the world. As you can see, the only difference is that not all the lights are working. Right behind my back, and the lighting is just dim in here. There's a smell of something old, too. And yet, people are fine with reading here. Look, the man is reading aloud. Some are browsing their phones, just like in Russia. Another form of entertainment is reading newspaper at the station. People just come up here to newspaper display stands, like this one. They come up here and start reading newspapers, trying to kill time. By the way, this is a very typical trait of North Korea. People don't keep their own newspapers here. This is because the party's policies are printed in the newspapers, but the policies tend to change sometimes. It would be possible to track these changes in the newspapers, but the government does not want its people to do this, for then they would know that the government and the leader are capable of making mistakes. That is why you'll never find a stack of newspapers dating to a certain year. You only have access to today's issue. The party has changed, but nobody recognizes this by design. Pyongyang's most recognizable building, the pyramid-shaped Ryugyang Hotel, is still unfinished. Not only that, but it should be pointed out that it was supposed to have opened before I, Anton, lyadov, was born 30 years ago. This hotel has 105 floors. The exterior walls are made of glass. A very expensive building. It isn't finished yet. It isn't finished. You can't stay there yet. Better luck next time. Even locals make fun of it now. Pyongyang's Ryugyang Hotel is legendary because its construction has been going on for decades now. Before a certain year, it simply stood like a gigantic concrete box. And then, at some point, it started to sink into the ground. Then the government signed a contract with an Egyptian firm that eventually helped to finish the building. But all they did was glaze it. This means it is no more than a huge pyramid. Just concrete and glass. This building has become what is probably the modern world's most expensive neon sign. It is used to project propaganda slogans in the evening, creating a lovely view. In view of all these stories and rumors, it is quite difficult to believe that life in North Korea is getting better even a little bit, although in truth it really is. The propaganda in the neighboring country, South Korea, is way more abundant than it is here. For example, there was a story about how the talks between Trump and Kim Jong Un fell through, and the South Korean newspaper reported that the great leader ordered the execution of Kim Jong-chol, North Korean special envoy. But the next day we saw him giving a speech at a ceremony. In 2013, it was reported that Kim Jong Un's former girlfriend, a singer by the name of Hyung Sun-wol, a lovely woman by the way, was executed for being involved in the pornography industry. But 2 years later, she was seen singing in Beijing. And there was a hilarious story on websites like Reddit. In 2014, the North Korean TV show showed how their football team beat Brazil, scoring 7-0. But in fact, North Korea didn't even participate in the competition in the first place. Yahoo Sports conducted a fact check, and it turned out that the host spoke a different language, and the whole lip-syncing thing was mistimed. The more advanced the technologies become, the more vulnerable North Korea is to the outside world. With this in mind, law enforcement officials more and more tend to turn a blind eye to such small things as someone smuggling a record player across the border, etc. Young Koreans have quite a good knowledge of Russian music. A TV broadcast at the Korean restaurant shows a Russian singer whose name I don't even know. I let the North Koreans listen to songs by Stas Mikhailov, Oxymiron, and Monetochka. Which song do you like most? The first one. You like the first one. It's for adults. And the least? The second one. The younger generation buys DVD players and CDs with American movies at the market. Here's a girl talking about watching Titanic for the first time.
I never saw anything about love stories between men and women. There is
I never saw anything about love stories between men and women. There are no books, no songs, no press, no movies about love. There is no Romeo and Juliet. Every story was propaganda. A turning point in my life was when I saw Titanic. I was astounded that anyone would make a movie out of such a shameful story. I was wondering if the director and the actors would be put to death for this. By the way, I'm really glad that DiCaprio is alive.
By the way, I'm really glad that DiCaprio is alive.
Why would the actors be killed? Well, in case you forgot, DiCaprio's character falls in love with Rose, who had a husband up there on the Titanic. And then she and DiCaprio make out till the cabin gets stuffy. This kind of display of physical intimacy is a taboo in North Korea. If a couple is seen so much as holding hands, that means they are a husband and wife until the end. Nobody in North Korea files for divorce. Divorces are actually non-existent. While it's officially possible to file for a divorce, in practice, divorce is not mentioned in government forms. Therefore, in practice, it appears not to exist. When I told someone that there are people in Russia who have had 5 marriages or more, his reaction was disbelief. What? How many? 5? It is just inconceivable for them to get married 5 times. Even if your husband or wife gets thrown in jail, you are simply likely to end up there with him or her as well. People here start families quite early. I once had a talk with some North Koreans in Pyongyang about how sad it was when children are born with abnormalities. They looked at me as if I were an idiot. They could not understand how children could be born with abnormalities. Why did they believe this? Not so long ago, you were not allowed to live in Pyongyang if you had a bad ascribed status, the so-called sonbum. Furthermore, if, for example, a child with a disability was born into a family, that family had to move away from Pyongyang to other regions. Actually, there are a ton of restrictions. Should one of your family members, God forbid, do something out of the ordinary, you are likely to be forced to move too. By out of the ordinary, for example, if someone from your family tries to cross the border and escape, or something equally horrible, this kind of thing will lead you to being forced to leave Pyongyang. People in the capital even have restrictions on the kind of hairstyles they can have. This is the list of approved haircuts for men. There are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 haircuts. 12 haircuts. This is true. I chose this one. It's for foreigners. It cost me $10. I do not believe I look anything like this. This guy is just very thin. Maybe that is why we don't look anything alike. So, imagine you want to shave your head or just wear your hair in a scruffy style. You must go live in the countryside then. But frankly speaking, there will be many people watching you there too. North Korean citizens cannot travel from one town to another at will. In order to travel anywhere, they first must complete a special application form to receive special business trip permits. This form is then reviewed and approved. Or not. There are also closed cities in the country, same as there are in Russia. And to gain access to such a place, one needs a completely different application form. Only relatives of the locals can visit these towns. It takes a week for such an application to be reviewed. So, as a rule, as soon as they arrive in town, a person from Pyongyang must check in with an organization called the Neighborhood Watch, or Imininbam in Korean. This Korean organization usually consists of 25 to 50 families that live in the same village or block. The point is that the community members should watch, even surveil one another. The chief person, usually a woman, gathers information about each community member and reports it to the local organizations. This all starts in childhood. Children become members of the Korean Children's Union when they are only 7 years old. But it's the military that is under the most constant watch. In North Korea, the length of military service is 10 years for men and 7 for women. That person who jumped out of the Jeep at the beginning of the video actually used to serve in the North Korean Army. He was a driver for an officer. His name is Oh Young-sung. He is only 25 years old, but he changed his name. I still can't believe this is me. All the bullets ended up in him. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, at least 4. I had a really bad feeling about his chances when I first saw him. How much blood did he lose? He lost over 50%. During the operation, they found a mass that looked like a strap or a rope in Young-sung's intestines. This mass turned out to be tapeworms. The biggest tapeworm turned out to be 12 inches long, and the smallest one was about an inch long. In total, there were 52 of them. There was a claim that he committed a crime in North Korea which led to several people being murdered. There are no specific details, but he believed that escaping from North Korea was the only way he could save his life. What was it like to have your friends, your colleagues shooting at you when you were running for freedom? If I had been them, I would have done the same. This is certainly true. It is because any sentries who don't shoot at him would have been court-martialed. However, the border with South Korea is a desperate measure for runaways. It is the most protected place in North Korea, and very few even dare to tread there. When escaping, the North Koreans usually run across the Chinese border. The border with North Korea is virtually unguarded on the Chinese side. In other words, the only thing holding back the flow of escapees from North Korea to China is North Korea itself. But there is almost no chance of staying in China for long. If a North Korean refugee in China is caught and fails to bribe whoever caught him, they will definitely be deported back to North Korea. All illegal immigrants understand this, so once they get to China, they quickly try to leave for someplace else. Once the escapees understand the actual conditions in China, they usually try to escape to South Korea. Getting from China to South Korea, however, is virtually impossible. This is the matter of diplomatic relationships. The Chinese government does not allow this because they understand that if China lets people escape to South Korea, it will worsen their relationship with North Korea. After escaping from North Korea through the Chinese border, Kim So-lee was traveling with her family on a bus to China. Our bus was stopped 8 hours after our departure. This time there was a Chinese officer. He ordered everyone to show him their documents. He was asking names, asking questions about what city we were born in, where we were going, and why. It was obvious that he was looking for escapees from North Korea. My heart froze in fear. Even though my relatives had Chinese documents I managed to procure, none of them could speak Chinese. The officer asked my brother to come to him. My brother froze in place. The officer spoke to him twice. The officer was annoyed. Then I got up and told the officer that my brother was deaf and mute and I was accompanying him. He looked at me with suspicion and distrust. At that moment, I heard a strange sound coming from behind. It was my mother. She was making noises pretending to be mentally ill. "She is with me too," I said. When he got off the bus, I understood that the people inside knew my relatives weren't deaf-mute. But surprisingly, they didn't say anything.
Amazingly, they didn't say anything.
But even if someone agrees to harbor North Korean refugees for a while, this doesn't go on for a long period of time. The North Korean Special Services have created a special division that is engaged specifically in searching China for escapees who can endanger the state's security. For example, imagine if a former intelligence officer escaped from North Korea to China. The Special Services understand that this person possesses a huge amount of interesting information that can actually threaten the security of the North Korean state. A whole new division was established, and its sole task lies in tracking down these people. All done unofficially, as you can understand. Such work is carried out by their special agents. They take advantage of the local community, bribe its inhabitants to get information on the targets, things like that. And then they just kidnap people. Without any official regulations, they just quietly snatch them away in the dead of night. And that is where hell breaks loose. So, after moving to China, the refugees try to leave for any other country as quickly as possible. It can be Laos or Vietnam. And after that, they contact the South Korean embassy. Theoretically, they can escape to Russia, but nobody does it today for one simple reason. Moscow and Pyongyang are good friends, so whichever escapees will be found will be sent back as soon as they're caught. There was one person who was out of his mind. Such things happen. It was clear that he escaped. We were trying to catch him everywhere. Yes, he was a bit sick in the head. Yes. He got sent back to North Korea. So, no, even when they were going through difficult times, when there were floods or famine, we were ready for refugees. But there have been no refugees here at all. Many people ask questions about what would happen to me in case the North Koreans understood what I had been doing all along. It's difficult to say. On the one hand, I did not violate any laws and I kept my nose out of other people's business. But then again, I also expressed my own opinion, which is highly unlikely to coincide with the opinion of the North Korean state leadership. By contrast, our fishermen were legitimately fishing in the neutral zone, and yet the Koreans still detained them, confined them to their cabins for about a week while also confiscating their phones. All of that even though they did not break any laws. The scariest moment was when I saw a couple of Russian journalists appear nearby. I put on women's glasses, tried to hide behind a crowd of Chinese tourists, and perhaps, for the first time in my life, began to pray. Before leaving North Korea, I really took every possible precaution to prevent them from discovering any of the footage I took. Dealing with international customs is mandatory. just as in any international airport. The Pyongyang airport is huge. In fact, this is a full-fledged international airport. It offers flights to China and Russia. The North Koreans take very good care of the first impression the country makes on its visitors. And it is also interesting that once your plane lands, you can immediately see beautiful apartment buildings. In fact, this is the only residential area visible from the airport during the landing. They gave me a ticket for the flight attendant seat, but later made me change my seat. What about security measures? Never mind. They stuffed everything that didn't fit in the overhead storage in front of the emergency exit. This is what North Korean planes look like. This airplane is often called the world's only no-star airline. The windows are covered by curtains. It shakes like hell. This is what the bathroom looks like. The window in this bathroom is located at the top. Here you can see the toilet and the toilet paper. They have napkins too. It also says they have drinking water. But this is not true. Here's a socket for razors, and here is a button to call the flight attendant in case of emergency. For lunch, we had 2 sausage sandwiches which tasted like they were made of soy dog meat. I didn't make any jokes, criticism, or even dare think about the great leaders until I landed in Russia. Upon our arrival in Russia, the inspection by the Russian security forces wasn't half as thorough as the one on the North Korean side. I was just granted entry back into Russia. I'm finally back in Russia. I just have no words. How nice. How simple. This is truly cathartic. Visiting North Korea left me constantly turning around to see if anyone was behind me. That place was a nightmare. What is the most difficult to put up with there is this heart-rending feeling which weighs really heavily on you, is knowing that you are under constant surveillance. When I say constant, I mean it. Even if you just take your smartphone into your hands without making any kind of video, just maybe to write down your thoughts if you saw something interesting and write it down, then you look around to think, somebody will see me writing something down, and then they will come to me with questions. Can you give us your phone? Why are you writing this down? What were you recording, how, and why? This is unbelievably difficult to live with. Maybe it is just that I'm such a freedom-loving person. So I guess if I have to draw some kind of general conclusion, here's what I have to say. I found myself surprised to find out that North Koreans are indeed such a hard-working people. I think you can imagine a person sitting on the highway. Then try to imagine a long, tediously long, giant highway, and then imagine that there is a man with a sickle carefully uprooting every single blade of grass piercing out between the cracks. They're truly, extremely hard-working people. There's no doubt about that. But this iron curtain of theirs, in my opinion, is blocking their progress. What I mean is, if only they had access to resources from other countries, to various technologies, if they would exchange with others and build up competition at least, and if they let other people into their country, the progress they could achieve would be unparalleled. They aren't like us. They aren't lazy, but they are shackled by all the prohibitions like you can't do it here, or not like this, smile now, or stop smiling now, and others. All of it just kind of kills any personality, leaving nothing human in you. It is very hard, and I'm very happy to be back in Russia. The luggage of everyone entering Russia from North Korea is inspected by a dog in case they have anything forbidden in their bags. Folks, the next trip will be a crazy experiment. To be honest, I don't know if I'll even do it. I don't know the route, where I'll spend the night, or what I'm going to eat. I'm not saying where my destination is right now, but I will tell you that it is more than 1,000 miles across deserts, forests, and so on. I hope I make it back and tell you about how people live there. I'm Lyadov. Thank you for watching my video. If you like what you see, please subscribe to this channel and follow me on Instagram.